to do it. Tech check. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. I'm Janine Reagan, your service leader for today, and I'm joined by Terry Sullivan at the piano, and a little later, Pete Condi will join us with his beautiful flute. And we want to thank Betsy, Dustin, and Henry for our technical and AV support today. But first, we have a few announcements. And my first announcement is please mute your telephone if you haven't already. We have a lot of things going on here at UUCLC, and you can find that information in our weekly bulletin, or you can check our website for all the activities coming up for this week. You'll also find the Zoom links there for any meetings that you might want to attend through Zoom. Jane Hepting will be featured in our very own Jane Hepting, will be featured in the News 6 Getting Results Award section for her conservation work at Lake County. Kaaren Woolhouse and Karen Frank, also part of the Social Justice Committee, were also interviewed for that segment. So we are very proud of Jane and her team. Yes, let me give you the dates on that. It's going to be at 6 p.m. On the Thursday newscast. That's April 20th. And I believe that's CBS. It's News 6. And so everybody try to tune into that. 6 p.m. Thursday, April 20th. If you're interested in learning more about UU and UUCLC, consider signing up for our next orientation class. The sign-up sheet is just outside the door in the narthex. We have rescheduled the class, Understanding Chronic Pain and What You Can Do About It. It will start on Monday, May 1st. It will go from 10:30 to 12 o'clock for each successive Monday after that for a total of 6 sessions. The sign-up sheet for that is also just to the right out there. If you have questions about that class and whether it's a good fit for you, please see me after the service today. On April 30th, our service will be held at Trout Lake Nature Center. This will be a special kind of Earth Day service. It'll be lots of fun. We're going to start out in the beginning with people being able to walk some of the trails in place of our discussion time, and then we'll have the service there at the center. There will be an email blast coming out that week that will give you directions to the Trout Lake Center. So please be on the lookout for that. That's going to be really fun. And you can bring your picnic lunch and stay afterward, and everybody can gather out at the picnic tables. Is there anyone here who has a brief announcement that you would like to make? Okay, nobody? All righty. If anyone is here for the first time or returning after a long absence, and only if you're comfortable doing so, please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you so that you can tell us who you are, what brought you here today. Is there anyone that would like to share? Over here?
I'm Linda Spencer, and I was just here. Mike. Linda Spencer, and I was here at the very beginning, and I stayed until the opening when COVID happened. Just been locked out. So now I'm back home. It's nice to be back.
Hi there, I'm Bruce Cusick. I'm part of Triangle Connection, but I also feel like I'm part of this church. I'm Episcopalian, but I enjoy coming over here from time to time. Thank you so much for inviting us and the partnership we have, and these ladies who spoke and educated us on transgender, the transgender community and all of the laws out there. I want to just say this, we had 45 people in that room, so I consider us having 45 trans allies, so thank you.
Just to supplement, Bruce has been on our committee, congregation committee. We've been meeting periodically, as has, and Kate also is on that committee, along with Anne Marie and Ellie, and we have a really vibrant committee, and I really appreciate them. The committee is headed by Christy Cleveland.
Hi, my name is Jean, and as you can tell from my accent, I'm from the UK. I've been here since I heard Unitarians when I was in the UK, and I've never gone to one of their meetings. So when I saw the effort in the local paper this week, I thought I'd come and have a look. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce, David and I live in Lawrence. We had a discussion this morning about Transgender 101 and also current issues with transgender rights and legislation. And so we're very happy to have been invited to do that and to help educate people about what's happening in the state of Florida and throughout the
Anyone else? We gratefully acknowledge the traditional lands of the Timucua Native peoples, upon whose ancestral homeland our church now stands. We are blessed with this land, and we vow to care for it as our Mother Earth cares for us and for all living things. All are welcome here this morning. Thank you for sharing your Sunday morning with us. We're going to. Oh, right, we have to say hi to the Zoom folks. Thank you. I jumped right over it. Well, I got to turn the Zoom folks back on. Now they're back on. With this little technology down here. Okay, so can we put up our Zoom people? There we go. We've got them. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
It truly.
He's here.
It does take a village to pull off one of these services. Okay, and now our opening words from our guest minister today, Kaaren Anderson.
Good morning. I want to tell you a little story. Many years ago, I was married to someone else rather than my husband, Scott, right now. And we did a few things right. We have two fabulous children together, but we also went to Glacier National Park for our honeymoon. So the thing about Glacier, when you get there, they are very aware and always reminding you to wear bear bells because of grizzlies everywhere. So we got some bear bells when we first got there, and we'd go on hikes, and you're on a hike for like 7 miles and you kind of get sick of the bear bells. So at one point we take them off and we made up this song that we sang over and over again. And it was oh, Mr. Bear, don't give us a scare. We're afraid of you, Mr. Bear. Oh, Mama Bear, don't give us a scare. We're afraid of you, Mama Bear. Oh, Baby Bear, don't give us a scare. We're afraid of you, Baby Bear. So we would sing that song for a long time. So one time we're on this hike and we're way out, and we had sung that song for like, I don't know, an hour at least. And then we were sick of the song. So not only did we not have Bear Bells on, we weren't singing the song. And I sat down to tie my shoe, and this family walks past us. And they have a 11-year-old who's leading the way, and she's got Bear Bells on, ding, 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 ding. And the parents say hi and walk on by. We let them pass for a while, so we're not like on their tail. And then we start following, the same path, going back to the beginning. And about half an hour in, there is this slope that comes from the left-hand side with this very big boulder right to our left. And we get there, and the parents have this look on their face like a complete shock. And it turns out that a grizzly, while they were walking and their daughters in front of them, had come down, got to where the boulder was, heard the Bear Bells, and turned around and went back up the mountain again. And they were just kind of totally shook. Their daughter, not so much. Pete and I, completely shook. It was there. I put on Bear Bells again, and we followed them back to the trailhead, to the beginning. I have always been grateful to that little girl for helping to continue on our song, not with singing, but with bells. I do think it's one of the reasons that we come back to church, to be able to help continue on one another's song. Because sometimes we get tired, or we're just not feeling well, or whatever it is, but we need other people to pick up our song and help us move forward with singing and, really living fully into this life. And that's what we can do best with each other, is help one another with our own song. Welcome to our celebration of life. It's so good to be with you guys today.
And Donna Blakely will come up today and help us with our chalice light. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. Christine Robinson. Keep trying. Good job. And you may remain seated as we sing Spirit of Life. The words will be on the screen. Each Sunday, we make time for those who wish to offer a joy, a concern, or sorrow, or set an intention for the coming days. As we share joy, it multiplies. When we share sorrow, it begins to lessen. Sharing an intention can give us strength. If you would like to take part in our stone ritual, I invite you now to come in silence to place the stone or stones in the sand at either of our stations, one in the front and one in the back. Following this time, anyone who has a joy, concern, or intention that they would like to share aloud with the congregation, please raise your hand and the mic will be brought to you. Thank you, Pete. Is there anyone who would like to share aloud today? I don't see any hands. Dawn Reed sent me a text this morning. She is requesting your thoughts and prayers for her friend Rodney McNeil, who is being treated for fluid on the brain. She is with him at Shands today. And we see that Kristen Hughes is on Zoom, and we always like to see him there because then we kind of know he's coming along well from his kidney transplant. Hi, Kristen. If there is anyone who has not been mentioned that you hold concern for, please feel free to name them aloud at this time. Those attending Zoom can unmute briefly. We will now enter into a time of silent meditation, being mindful of the joys and concerns that we have heard today. Take a moment to find a comfortable posture and let the chime draw you into mindfulness. And then Terry's lovely music will bring us back. Please join me in reaffirming who we are by reciting together our congregational covenant found on the screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and through service we live our principles. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. It is our tradition at UUCLC to give generously to our church, keeping in mind both its meaning in our lives and its impact in the world. There are several ways to donate listed on the screen. There's also a wooden box just outside the door on the left, where you can put donations today if you wish. And thank you for your support. I would now like to invite Bill and Sandy Devenhall to come forward and tell us about the upcoming pledge drive.
It's time for all of us to join UUCLC in planning for the next fiscal year. At the annual meeting, we talked about our wants and needs and the budget. Now we are launching our pledge drive and inviting all members and friends to participate. We have sent out a pledge brochure and pledge cards by way of email. We hope you all received it, and we received ours yesterday. If you did not receive it, there are hard copies of the brochure and the pledge cards in the lobby. We will indicate each week our success in fulfilling our budget goals using the giant thermometer in the lobby. Check it out. There is already $17,660 on it. We'll get more. There are various ways to submit your pledge, including the following: dropping your card into the box in the lobby that Janine just referred to, mailing your pledge card back to Chris Higgins, our treasurer, using the pre-printed labels and plain white envelopes provided in the table in the lobby, just handing your pledge card to Chris in an envelope that she will take back and record, or sending Chris an email telling her how much you are pledging. Finally, each Sunday for the next several weeks, you will hear some brief remarks from others about why they value the work of our congregation. And now Bill will tell you why we have already sent in our pledge.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Sandy and I have only been a member of this congregation for less than a year. In fact, I was asking this morning if she knows our anniversary date, and we have forgotten it, but we think it's July or August. So we're kind of newbies, and we're still very new to the Unitarian Universalist community. So that gives us a free pass from time to time. Now, we both believe that making an annual pledge is really about making a promise. And the entire congregation should know that we intend to do whatever we can do to ensure and strive to preserve programs and the facilities that make our work easier here in this community. First of all, we want to protect programs. What are those programs? Well, these are the programs that gather us together, that give us the encouragement and the hope that we're looking for. And we get together on a regular basis, and that allows us to really demonstrate our resolve about making a difference in our communities. That's kind of important. We also believe that it's going to help have a strong ministry here, and we can be assured of having a consistent presence of ministerial support and spiritual encouragement. Without that, we probably will be less effective. We need people who will help us to learn how to walk our talk. And finally, we have a unique physical building. Just look around. It's a very pleasant and comforting and safe environment. It's a place that provides us an exceptional opportunity for welcoming, partnering, sanctuary that welcomes all people to it. And we have additional space that allows us to do even better things like gathering for learning and discussions and enjoying hospitality for all those who enter herein. So in Sandy and our opinion is that these are the basic tools that any organization really needs to have available to them and to help us carry out the serious work that we all engage together. So from the Davenhall family, we just like to say, we've already handed in our pledge. We invite each of you here today in person or remotely to join Sandy and me in the joyful and exciting act of making and delivering on a promise. Thank you very much. I wanted Chris Higgins to stand up so everyone knows who to give their, Chris? Yeah, everybody see Chris? Okay, thank you very much.
Just make a pledge. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Sandy and Bill. So our first hymn is Wake Now Our Senses. It is hymn 298. And you may stand if you're willing and able. And the words will be on the screen. And there's also hymnals probably in front of you on the under the chairs if you would prefer a hymnal. Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and place the sublime. Wake now compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the white sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my visions of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
When I was a young woman, I had a few men in my life I was smitten by. And what I mean by smitten, I had this like little place in my heart that made up the qualities of an ideal man. And they were these people in this order: my daddy, Mick Jagger, my cousin Tron, and Henry David Thoreau. Now, all of them good guys. Well, I don't really know about Jagger, but men, more or less, that I admired for some character strength they all had. And concerning Henry David Thoreau, it was certainly not because of the way he looked. In fact, one of his contemporaries, Nathaniel Hawthorne, described him as this: "He is ugly as sin, long nose, queer mouth, with uncouth and somewhat rustic manners. But his ugliness is of an honest and agreeable fashion, and becomes him much better than beauty." So I was smitten with a man who wouldn't have made any girl turn her head from the other side of the room because he was debonair or charming or extremely handsome. No, that's not why I liked him. I liked him because he was a person who lived his life with great intention. Thoreau was a New England writer in the 1800s. He was a recluse of sorts, an amateur botanist who became famous in later years through the Transcendentalist movement, but also for living in a little shack on Walden Pond that was about 10 by 10 feet outside Concord, Mass., where he wrote and was very present to his life and also to the natural world. What people don't know, by the way, is that quite often he would walk through the woods to go to his mother's house for dinner. Now, there's also a great story that I love about Thoreau that kind of captures my imagination. So it seems Henry needed to pick up his shoe at the cobbler's shop in town. So he walks into Concord, Mass. And on his way in, he runs into Sam Staples. Now, Sam Staples is the constable of the town, and Sam is responsible for collecting the poll tax, which was assessed on all males from the age of 22 to 70. So Thoreau was 29 at the time, and he had not paid the tax for many, many years. And owing to certain personal convictions, wasn't about to either. So Staples says to Thoreau, "Henry, if you don't pay, I'll surely have to lock you up." To which Thoreau replied, "Well, now's as good a time as any." So Thoreau was taken to the county jail, and there he stays overnight in this little cell with barred windows on it. And he was released in the morning because his Aunt Marie had compassion for him and dropped off money on her nephew's behalf. Now, most people would have been grateful for being, bailed out of jail, right? Thoreau was not. A year or so before his overnight incarceration, Henry had spoke with candor at the town's lyceum about his opinions on the poll tax. This is what he said: "Refusing to pay taxes in a country that tolerates slavery and has recently launched an unjust war on Mexico is not a crime, but a moral obligation to rebel, resist, and revolutionize." Soon after all this hoopla, he wrote that wonderful essay on the duty of civil disobedience, which, as one author put it, has always been kind of a stirring ode to nonconformists who put conscience above the letter of the law and the will of the minority. Thoreau is kind of an iconoclastic Unitarian folk hero, or intellectual hero, you might say, a man who lived with great intention when it came to his principles. This man, as ugly as sin, has always been someone to emulate when it comes to character as a building block to good moral conduct. That is, actually, until I read this book by A.L. Press called Beautiful Souls. Press skillfully tells the story of people who said no, broke the ranks, and heeded the voice of conscience in dark times. As I'm reading this book, I'm thinking, it's going to point to examples of intentional living that can help guide all of us in the direction of what makes society better. And that, of course, was predicated, right, on the belief that if we bring our best selves forward in service to the common good, we can make the larger good better, right? Except what I was expecting to find didn't hold true. Press tells many stories of principled, ordinary people who on first blush seem to have done amazing things just because of exemplar character. So I want to tell you this story about this one guy named Paul Gruneger. Now, Gruneger was the commander of the state police in St. Gallen at which was like a northwestern town in Switzerland that butts up against Austria. Basically, he was the head hoo-ha of border police in that area. Now, this is 1938. The Swiss government had just closed its borders, and it had instructed all of the border guards to not let anyone in without any kind of proper documentation. Nobody. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. But we all know from 10th grade history that there were many Jews trying to get the hell out of Dodge, right? In November of 1938, the Nazis stormed Vienna in an organized assault known as Kristallnacht, which turned Austria's state capital into a city of terror and violence. Hundreds of Jewish shops were vandalized, dozens of temples were burned down, and countless injuries and fatalities were recorded. So that assault left little doubt that with the unification of Austria and Germany, what all of this would mean for Jews. That said, with the border closed and strict kind of orders to enforce it, there were indeed many people trying to get across the border and find safe passage out of the country, which many of them couldn't do, but something happened at Gruneger's post, because many Jews were making it into Switzerland and finding refuge. Now, as I said, Gruneger was the commander of his unit, and he was considered, well, a conservative person. He was not a rule breaker at all. He was not a rescuer of any kind. He sang in his church choir. He thought of himself as a very kind of patriotic person and civil servant. So why, I think it's got to be asked, why did he time and time again, when Jews who sought refuge, help them actually make it past the border into Switzerland at his post? And I really began to wonder if maybe just Paul had exceptional character, right? But what I learned is people's moral conduct often has nothing to do with their character. In fact, in other books I've read on rescuers, many of the character traits of a lot of these heroes of mercy, you might call them, right? We wouldn't want to uplift. Sometimes they were cheats and thieves, hijackers and blackmailers. So it wasn't character. You got to ask, what was it? The answer actually lies back in Gruneger's story. He knew the rules, right? Nobody was really allowed to pass. Almost all of the other border captains delegated the responsibility, though, to someone else. They knew the decree and passed the rule on to a subordinate, and then they went about their business. Paul, though, did not. Each person who was seeking asylum stood in front of him, pleading with him for his help. In fact, because he let hundreds of people actually cross the border, Gruneger was fired and disgraced by his community up until the end of his life. He spent decades after the war, like trying to regain his good standing amongst his people. At one point, he actually wrote a letter to the Swiss government defending his actions, and he said this: "Whoever had the opportunity, as I had, to repeatedly witness the heartbreaking kind of scenes of the concerns of the people, the screaming and crying of mothers and children, the threats and suicide and attempts to do it, I ultimately couldn't do it anymore." See, it turns out that the one thing that all the rescuers have in common, who exemplified exceptional moral conduct, who did what was right, was not a common character trait, but instead a proximity to suffering firsthand. Only common factor. IL Press says this: what ultimately determines moral conduct are not character traits, personal beliefs, or political attitudes, but situational factors. The social psychologist Stanley Milgram, who worked at Yale in the 1960s, did a whole bunch of work kind of around this area, and he concluded that a person's proximity to harm or suffering always directly correlated to how responsible they felt to alleviate the suffering before them. So I want to go back to Thoreau for a minute, okay? I have forever and a day lifted up his actions to be the exemplar of character, of intentional, kind of principled living that guided one's moral conduct. But I missed something. And it's this: there is a difference, a distinction between being a good person and being a good citizen, or as I believe, being a good religious person. In other words, if Thoreau's hands were clean, that was enough for him. In his own words, he says this. He said, "It is not a man's duty to devote himself to the eradication of any, even to the most enormous wrong. He may still properly have other concerns to engage him, but it is his duty at least to wash his hands of it, and if he gives it no thought longer, not to give it practically his support." So here's the thing, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I am. We need to do more than Thoreau. He was a man who held strong character traits of honor, justice, and judgment, but his view is limited, mainly because it ends with the personal, with me, right? It ends with, as long as my hands aren't tainted by wrongdoing, then I'm good to go. But I don't see how, as religious people, as we all are, we can end there. Our own Unitarian Universalist principle, in fact, in particular, the last one, respect for the interdependent web of which we are a part, strikes me as being impossible to uphold if we are all Thoreau. Our own theology of connection, with an emphasis on reminding each other that we are all inextricably not just bound to each other as human beings, but the well-being of another is indeed related to our own well-being. That couldn't be possible with Thoreau's attitude. As a Unitarian Universalist minister, I am fond of saying we are here together to serve needs greater than our own. But perhaps a better way of saying that is to see others' needs as our own. That goes beyond Thoreau's, my hands are clean and I'm done. It also demands more than having good character, intentional, kind of purposeful living. It means that we must continually be in close proximity to those who are the victims of the evil we want to wash our hands of. It means we engage, we don't stop there. Instead, we promise to one another. This little band of us gathered even Sunday morning, right? We will stay close to the suffering of the human condition, so we are not only good people with good character, people who live with intention, but we are good religious people, good world citizens, good sisters and brothers to the human family. So while it's important to work on being a good person by developing your character, it's equally important, I think, to live in proximity, which I don't think is easy, by the way. 15 years ago, I brought a group of teenagers to 2 border towns in Mexico Reynosa, and Matamoros with New York State Labor Religion Coalition. And ostensibly the trip was to be able to see the effects of NAFTA on third world countries. So we met with workers in their homes that were often built with pallets and scrap metal and sometimes cardboard. They had no locks, no running water, no latrines, no electricity. They had dirt floors. Homes that when we visited them, they raked the dirt of any debris so it was completely clean. Like you could see the scratch marks of what the rake had left in the dirt. They repeatedly commented on what an honor, I kid you not, an honor they felt by being able to talk to their northern sisters and brothers. At one home, I distinctly remember 3 5-gallon buckets that had been like turned over with a 8x2 board over the top, and 2 immaculate like kitchen towels that were white with poinsettias on them that they asked us to sit on. It was the only thing that was immaculate anywhere in miles. But they asked us to sit there while we listened to their stories. For 6 days, we listened to stories. Most of the workers made $6 a day by working for American companies that had moved their factory right across the border, across the Rio Grande, to reap the benefits of cheap labor. Already, though, many of those factories had already moved their factory to Asia because the cheap labor is even cheaper. And it became increasingly clear that 2 working parents could not at all make ends meet. So at one point on the trip, they took us to the grocery store with the equivalent of what it was for 2 parents to make in a week. And we were instructed of what we were supposed to buy, right? With that money. What could we afford? So we went looking for the items on the list and calculating the cost, and given the amount of money we had to spend. And after an hour walking through and trying to figure this out, we were woefully insufficient. You could get rice and beans and oil, but you did not have enough money for cornmeal for tortillas. There was nothing, and I mean nothing, left over for clean water or for toilet paper. Most parents actually had to send their kids to work at 6th grade because you had to start paying for school at that age. So when you can't buy toilet paper or clean water, what wins out? Certainly not in education. There were 11-year-olds begging our groceries as we left, asking for tips. The point I'm trying to make is this. I have had proximity in my life numerous times. This is possibly like the most striking example, right? But it doesn't have to be a foreign visit to witness and experience suffering. But this experience was years ago, and in that time, there have been new labor laws and immigration rights that I promised myself I would keep up to date on. But I have found actually that the farther I am away from that proximity, the farther I get from real relational closeness to those suffering from the injustice. And when that happens, I start forgetting. Not entirely, of course, but I start forgetting what that firsthand experience feels like, not intellectually, but in your gut. Like how you are settled with yourself, which you aren't settled with yourself. And if you had been there, I promise you would have felt like I did, that it is sheer luck that the squalor and abject poverty and diminishing futures wasn't the cards that were dealt to me. That's it. It's all freaking luck. And it is in proximity that your gut kind of kicks in, and you see the person standing in front of you as their needs being your needs. That was years ago now. And I am in need of, well, the kind of gut moving, personal, relational, close up experience more often. And I would submit we probably all could use a little bit more of this. But here's the thing, right? Committed action in church or personally usually looks more like Thoreau. Thoreau did all the right thinking and thoughtful writing and provided people with good, excellent arguments. He said the right things, held the right positions. But besides not paying his taxes, he didn't really do anything. Because real change, both in the external world and internally, perhaps where it's most important, needs more than that formula that Thoreau offers. It takes thinking carefully about an issue, but it's more than that. It's actually takes getting close, allowing the pain of others to alter you, to be in relationship with people, to activate your empathy, and then commit yourself to actions that arise out of that proximity. So, friends, I'm hoping together you can ask the right questions of each other so you can become the change you want to see in the world. There are many ways about going about doing this, but I know for certain, no matter what, the importance of relying on the lesson learned about proximity needs to be front and center. That right positioning, proximity, is more important than right thinking. Cultivating like a close relationship is more important than cultivating careful thought. That the formula we have always thought works, get informed, get passionate, get going, is flawed. It has unintentional consequences to it. Because you only get halfway there, right? You're not totally engaged the same way. It's time we resisted this way of thinking and change our perspective and approach. And for me, it's not just semantics to change the aspect of get passionate to get close. Getting close is that which flips this on in your head and flips your gut in. Get informed, get close, and get going is actually akin to walking up to Paul Gruneger's grave and telling him he did good. Though he wasn't recognized at his time for his good deeds, nor decades afterwards, there's a little band of feisty Unitarian Universalists who know he was on to something. When you look suffering in the eye, the way that Gruneger did with his life, we want to hold on to as our moral example his life of the good religious life. And it is a little band of Unitarian Universalists that today lay our hearts and our metaphorical flowers in front of his grave and say thank you for that invaluable lesson. Get informed, my friends, then get close, and then get going. May it be so. Amen.
And you may stand if you're able and willing for our next hymn, which is We Would Be One.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to the high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one
and searching for that meaning which bends our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free. Thank you, Alexandra, for leading us so well. And next week, we hope you will join us for return of Reverend Snavely, Making the Impossible Possible. And Linda and Katie, are you back with us next week? No? Okay, I've got the wrong discussion down here. But we will have an interesting discussion at 9:30 as well. So please join us. So join with the words for extinguishing our chalice. We may this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now we will end by singing Weave, and you may take the hands of your neighbors or just hold your hands up and kind of wave energy at everyone, whatever you are comfortable with. Join us for coffee and cookies in the social hall.